Amelia had always been drawn to the supernatural. As a child, she'd read every ghost story she could get her hands on, watched horror movies alone, and even convinced her friends to hold seances on Halloween. When she inherited an old house from her grandmother, a house with a sinister reputation, Amelia couldn't contain her excitement. Whispering Hill, they called it, named for the way the wind seemed to murmur secrets through the trees surrounding the property. The townsfolk, however, had other names for it: the haunted house, the devil's nest, the gateway to the other side. To Amelia, these only added to its charm. When she arrived on a chilly October morning, Whispering Hill was everything she'd imagined. Tall, twisted trees framed a large, Gothic mansion that loomed against the overcast sky. Ivy crawled over the stone walls, and the windows seemed to stare down at her, watching, waiting. It was perfect. As she unlocked the front door and stepped inside, a shiver ran down her spine. The air felt thick, almost tangible. Dust covered every surface, and the scent of age and mildew lingered. She smiled. This is going to be fun. Amelia spent the next few days settling in, exploring every room and hidden corner. She found a library filled with antique books on the occult, a dusty attic filled with strange, forgotten relics, and a cellar that seemed to descend far deeper than expected. She sensed a presence, a weight pressing down on her shoulders, but she brushed it off as her overactive imagination. The whispers started on her fourth night. Just as she was falling asleep, she heard a faint murmuring coming from the hallway outside her bedroom. It was low and indistinct, like someone speaking from another room. She sat up, heart pounding, straining to listen. The whisper stopped. Amelia laughed nervously. "Getting jumpy, are we?" she muttered to herself. She lay back down, but sleep didn't come easily. The whispers grew louder over the next few nights. Sometimes they sounded like a single voice, other times like a cacophony of hushed voices speaking in a language she didn't understand. She tried to ignore them, but curiosity got the better of her. One evening, as the whispers grew insistent, she grabbed a flashlight and decided to investigate. Following the voices, Amelia made her way to the library. The whispers seemed to emanate from the far wall, behind a tall bookcase filled with ancient tomes. She ran her hands over the dusty spines, hoping to uncover a clue. Her fingers brushed against a small, brass handle hidden in the shadows. Her heart raced. Pulling the handle, she heard a faint click, and the bookcase swung open, revealing a narrow passageway. Cold, damp air wafted out, carrying with it the scent of earth and decay. Without hesitation, Amelia stepped inside, flashlight in hand. The passage led her down a winding staircase that seemed to go on forever. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, as if urging her forward. She felt a strange compulsion, a need to uncover whatever lay at the end of this descent. At last, she reached the bottom, finding herself in a small, stone chamber lit by a single, flickering candle. In the center of the room stood an old wooden chest, its lid adorned with strange symbols. She approached it, her breath catching in her throat. As her fingers traced the symbols on the lid, she felt a surge of energy, like a current running through her veins. She hesitated, a voice in her mind whispering for her to turn back, but curiosity won out. She lifted the lid. Inside the chest lay a collection of objects: strands of hair, bone fragments, and small, blood-stained dolls. Amelia recoiled, feeling a wave of nausea, but something held her there. Among the grisly contents lay an old, leather-bound book. She picked it up, feeling the weight of it, the power emanating from its pages. Flipping through the book, she found it filled with incantations, spells, and illustrations of creatures she had never seen before. Her heart raced as she scanned the pages, her mind absorbing the forbidden knowledge. She knew she should put it down, leave it behind, but the pull was too strong. That night, she couldn't sleep. The whispers had grown louder, filling her mind with words she couldn't understand, yet somehow felt familiar. They called to her, urging her to open the book, to read from its pages. In the early hours of the morning, Amelia gave in. She sat at the library table, candlelight casting shadows over her face, and opened the book to a page marked with a symbol she recognized, a sigil she had seen carved into the walls of the secret chamber. As she read aloud, a chill swept through the room. The candle flickered, and the shadows seemed to grow, stretching across the walls. Her voice grew stronger, more confident, as she recited the ancient incantation. Suddenly, the air grew thick, heavy. The candle snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. Amelia froze, her heart pounding in her chest. And then she heard it, the sound of footsteps. They were slow, deliberate, echoing through the silence. She couldn't see anything, but she felt it, a presence in the room with her, watching, waiting. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The footsteps grew closer, and a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a man, or at least something that had once been a man. His skin was pale and stretched tight over his bones, his eyes sunken and hollow. He stared at her, a twisted smile on his lips. "You summoned me," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves scraping against stone. Amelia couldn't move, couldn't speak. She had read about spirits, about summoning rituals, but this was something else. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder, and the world around her began to blur. "Join us," the man whispered, his breath icy against her skin. "Join us in the darkness." The room spun, and Amelia felt herself being pulled, dragged into a place she couldn't comprehend. The last thing she saw was the twisted smile of the man, and the darkness swallowing her whole. The next morning, the townsfolk noticed something strange. The old house on Whispering Hill, the one everyone avoided, looked different. The windows were broken, the door hanging ajar. Curious but cautious, a few brave souls ventured inside. They found Amelia's belongings, her bags and books, scattered across the floor. But there was no sign of her, only the faint sound of whispers, echoing through the empty halls. And in the library, lying open on the table, was an old, leather-bound book. Its pages were blank, as if the words had been wiped away. The townsfolk left in silence, leaving the house to its secrets. Whispering Hill remained, as it always had, watching and waiting for the next curious soul to step inside.